it is the sickest feeling you can imagine because your mistake hurts so many other people, and it is hard to shake it off.
Shedeur Sanders didn't just make headlines for his play, he made them for what came after. In a moment broadcast live for millions to see, Sanders turned to kicker Szmyt and let his frustration spill out, creating one of the most talked about sideline confrontations of the season. Cameras caught every second, and the clip raced across social media before the game had even ended. For some, it looked like fiery leadership. For others, it crossed the line into humiliation. TV ratings spiked the moment Shedeur Sanders took the field, with Cleveland's preseason broadcast pulling in a 21% higher local share than the previous week's game against Detroit. Yet the lasting headline wasn't his stat line. It was the confrontation with Szmyt. Sanders completed 18 of 27 passes for 214 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game, numbers solid for a rookie still adjusting to NFL speed, while Szmyt missed a 41-yard attempt that would have iced the matchup. Instead of being remembered as another efficient outing for the Browns' rookie quarterback, the national broadcast zeroed in on Sanders pointing and shouting at Szmyt in full view of the cameras, a moment replayed more times on highlight shows than any of his completions. Within an hour of the final whistle, ESPN reported that Sanders' sideline clip had generated more digital impressions than the game-winning drive itself, with hashtags around his name trending higher than the Browns' victory. The immediate consequence was that the storyline flipped overnight from Cleveland's preseason momentum to whether Sanders had embarrassed his teammate in front of a national audience. For Szmyt, the numbers were glaring. NFL kickers from 40 to 49 yards hit at a 78% clip last season, but Szmyt's preseason accuracy hovered at 50%, with 2 misses in his first 3 games. That kind of inconsistency is already tough to survive in a league where roster spots are precious, but being called out by the face of the franchise only magnified it. Sanders' words may not have been audible, but his body language, a frustrated quarterback gesturing toward the spot of the missed kick, was clear enough for fans and analysts alike to draw their own conclusions. The effects spilled over into broadcast coverage. Local post-game shows, which normally would have broken down Sanders' reads against cover 2 shells or his progressions on 3rd down, instead dedicated multiple segments to replaying the argument. One Cleveland affiliate logged that the confrontation clip was shown 7 times in a 30-minute post-game wrap-up, a ratio that dwarfed any actual highlight package. National outlets didn't ignore it either. NFL Network's Ticker even ran a lower third headline reading, "Sanders confronts kicker after miss." That language turned a single sideline interaction into a talking point that fed directly into the Browns' ongoing questions about leadership. The most immediate casualty was Szmyt's job security. Browns beat writers noted that the missed kick, paired with Sanders' visible reaction, increased pressure on the front office to consider alternatives before the roster cut deadline. Kickers on the bubble often live or die by small margins, and while numbers matter, perception matters just as much. Having a rookie quarterback visibly express a lack of confidence adds weight to every decision made in the front office. It wasn't just one missed attempt, it was a missed attempt followed by a viral moment that suggested the locker room's star player had run out of patience. And yet, for Sanders, the impact cut in the opposite direction. Social media engagement around his name jumped by 36% compared to the prior week, according to tracking services that monitor NFL player mentions. That rise in visibility has its positives: endorsements, fan discussions, media airtime, but it also tethers his public image to the idea of a fiery quarterback unafraid to single out teammates. The risk is that it pigeonholes him early in his career into a narrative that may overshadow his development as a passer. Every throw and every huddle interaction will now be judged through the lens of whether he's lifting teammates up or putting them down. At the core, the immediate headline was not about Szmyt's missed field goal, nor even Sanders' passing stats. It was about the shift in focus, from execution on the field to dynamics on the sideline. That shift, backed by higher ratings and amplified by endless replays, ensured that Sanders' rookie year would not just be measured by yards and touchdowns, but by how he handles the spotlight when frustration meets accountability. Every rookie season comes down to more than numbers on a stat sheet, and the confrontation between Shedeur Sanders and Szmyt is a perfect example of how perception can matter just as much as performance. On paper, Sanders is doing enough to justify the Browns' investment. His preseason completion percentage sits just over 65%, an efficiency rate that places him above the league-wide rookie average of 59% during exhibition play. His decision-making looks poised, his footwork steady, and his pocket presence already better than expected against live NFL defenses. Yet none of those positives could drown out the clip of him going after Szmyt, which reshaped the discussion from progress and potential into questions about leadership, chemistry, and locker room dynamics. For Sanders himself, this moment matters now because the NFL stage is unforgiving, unlike college football, where one heated sideline exchange can be dismissed as youthful energy. The professional level magnifies every expression. Analysts on ESPN's Get Up dedicated a full segment to the exchange, debating whether Sanders' frustration was the mark of a natural leader or a dangerous sign of immaturity. One host cited that Cleveland averaged just 1.7 field goal attempts per game last year, suggesting that missing even a single opportunity could swing multiple contests in a playoff race. Sanders' visible lack of tolerance for failure underscores that pressure, but it also places him at the center of a debate most rookies are spared. Instead of being insulated as he learns, he is already being measured against the league's established quarterbacks in terms of body language and sideline presence. For Andre Szmyt, the stakes are even higher. Kicking is the NFL's most fragile position. One mistake can derail an entire career. League-wide, the margin for error is shrinking. Last season, 22 teams carried only a single kicker on the roster, meaning tryout opportunities are scarcer than ever. Szmyt's 50% preseason accuracy rate undercuts the league average by nearly 30 percentage points, and now he must fight against both numbers and narrative. Getting chewed out on live TV by the team's most marketable rookie doesn't just sting personally, it directly threatens his future employment. Coaches and general managers pay attention to whether quarterbacks, particularly franchise investments, trust their special teams. When they don't, decisions are accelerated. For Szmyt, it means every kick he attempts between now and cut day carries the weight of whether he can convince Cleveland to keep him around. From the team's perspective, the moment is equally significant. The Browns' recent history is littered with quarterback controversies, locker room fractures, and organizational resets. The franchise has been craving stability, and Sanders was drafted not only to deliver on the field, but to symbolize a new era of cohesion. Instead, 3 preseason games into his career, he is part of a viral clip that could be read as undermining a teammate. That perception matters in a locker room that needs trust as much as it needs talent. Teammates notice when a quarterback singles someone out, and while some may interpret it as accountability, others may view it as crossing a line. If the Browns are to position themselves as a playoff caliber roster, internal buy-in must be unanimous. A sideline blow-up under bright cameras chips away at that goal. There's also the timing to consider. The NFL calendar has no patience for internal drama. By week 1, depth charts are set, practice reps allocated, and game plans installed. Sanders' outburst came at a critical juncture when rookies typically focus on cementing trust with veterans and coaches. Instead, he's now shouldering questions about leadership style. That shift alters how coaches manage him in practice. More media obligations, more press conference questions, and potentially less bandwidth to refine mechanics and chemistry with receivers. Head coach Kevin Stefanski already faces a tightrope walk balancing a rookie quarterback's confidence with the rest of the roster's morale. Sanders' fire may energize some, but it also adds another layer of management to an already delicate preseason transition. On a league-wide level, this matters because Sanders is not just any rookie. He carries a name that already attracts disproportionate attention thanks to his father's coaching profile and the media circus that followed him from Colorado to Cleveland. Every action is amplified, every gesture dissected. The confrontation with Szmyt instantly became a symbol of whether Sanders would follow the path of quarterbacks like Joe Burrow, who earned respect through calm resilience, or flame out like Johnny Manziel, whose sideline antics often overshadowed his play. The NFL thrives on these narratives, and Sanders' early chapters are being written in real time on live television, with consequences that extend well beyond the box score. This moment also ties into measurable consequences on the field. A missed 41-yard field goal changes win probability by nearly 12% on average, according to historical data. Sanders knew that. His visible frustration wasn't just about one teammate, it was about the math of losing opportunities in a league where margins are razor thin. In 2022, 9 games were decided by 3 points or fewer each week on average, meaning a single missed field goal often dictates playoff berths. Sanders' anger was rooted in reality. reality, but expressing it so publicly risks creating new problems. The Browns don't just need a quarterback who can deliver yards. They need one who can hold together a locker room. Right now, that balance feels unsettled. For fans, this is why the clip hits so hard. Supporters want Sanders to succeed, to be the quarterback who finally gives Cleveland stability. They see his passing stats, his composure in the huddle, and his ability to move the chains. But they also see a quarterback who, instead of picking up a struggling teammate, chose to lash out on national television. In a city long haunted by quarterback failures, fans are now split between those who view the confrontation as evidence of a competitive edge and those who fear it's a red flag of deeper problems. Put simply, it matters now because it goes beyond one preseason kick. It's about Sanders' rookie identity, Szmyt's roster survival, and the Browns' fragile chemistry. A single missed field goal created ripples that reached into leadership narratives, roster decisions, and national headlines. A reminder that in the NFL, everything is connected and everything is amplified. Unlike many rookies before him, Shedeur Sanders doesn't have the luxury of easing into the NFL spotlight quietly. His sideline exchange with Szmyt instantly drew comparisons to other quarterbacks whose rookie seasons were defined as much by personality and perception as by play. For instance, when Baker Mayfield entered the league in 2018, his rookie energy was electrifying, but his fiery sideline antics sometimes raised eyebrows. In a nationally televised game against the Texans, Mayfield was caught jawing at teammates after a blown assignment, sparking debates about whether his passion crossed into immaturity. Cleveland fans know this history well, and watching Sanders call out Szmyt on live TV brought back echoes of those same questions. Is this authentic leadership or a troubling red flag? The contrast deepens when you place Sanders next to quarterbacks like Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence. Burrow's rookie year was cut short by injury, but his calm, unflappable demeanor on the sideline won over teammates and fans even before the win started coming. Lawrence in Jacksonville faced a disastrous first season under Urban Meyer, yet rarely was he seen berating teammates on camera. Instead, his reputation grew as someone steady in chaos. Sanders' outburst against Szmyt pushes him into the opposite column, drawing comparisons not to calm leaders, but to quarterbacks like Johnny Manziel, whose sideline body language often overshadowed his talent. It's unfair to lump Sanders entirely into that category, but perception is everything in a league where narratives can stick to players for years. The kicker side of this story also has strong historical parallels. In 2018, Cody Parkey's infamous double doink miss in the playoffs became a permanent part of his career identity, even though he converted 76.7% of his field goals that year. Blair Walsh's 27-yard playoff miss for the Vikings in 2015 ended his tenure in Minnesota, despite having been a Pro Bowler earlier in his career. In both cases, the misses themselves weren't the only issue. It was the public reaction and the way teammates responded afterward that cemented their legacies. For Szmyt, being visibly confronted by Sanders after a miss turns what might have been just another preseason error into something larger, something that could define how coaches and fans view him. The comparison extends into numbers. NFL kickers hit roughly 85% of field goals overall last season, and the league average from 40 to 49 yards, where Szmyt missed, is just under 78%. Szmyt's 50% preseason rate not only puts him below replacement level, but also highlights how valuable every made kick is to win probability. Advanced stats show that a missed 41-yarder in a one-possession game lowers a team's win odds by about 11%. That context explains Sanders' frustration, but the delivery sets him apart from quarterbacks who manage these moments behind closed doors. Mahomes, for example, has had games where Harrison Butker missed crucial kicks, yet rarely is he seen reacting negatively toward his kicker in public. Instead, he uses post-game pressers to reinforce confidence, a leadership style that insulates teammates from scrutiny. Another meaningful comparison comes from sideline dynamics among rookies. Justin Herbert's first year in Los Angeles was defined by quiet consistency. He put up over 4,300 passing yards, but his body language was almost never a story. Sanders, by contrast, has only thrown for a few hundred preseason yards, yet his sideline presence has already become a headline. This shows how magnified his situation is, in part because of his name and in part because Cleveland has lived through so many quarterback sagas. Fans and analysts alike are quicker to draw lines between Sanders and predecessors like Mayfield or Manziel than to give him the benefit of the doubt. There's also a financial comparison worth noting. When Mayfield had his first viral sideline clip, Cleveland's merchandise sales spiked briefly. His jersey cracked the top 10 in the league. Sanders, even in preseason, is already selling jerseys at a pace that rivals the league's top rookies, with local shops in Cleveland reporting a 40% uptick in Browns jersey sales during the first 2 weeks of August. That means every headline about his leadership, good or bad, carries a business impact. Fans don't just debate whether Sanders humiliated Szmyt, they debate whether this is the face of the franchise they're investing in when they spend $150 on a jersey or $300 on a ticket. When you zoom out, the comparison and contrast reveal one central truth. Sanders is walking a razor's edge between being celebrated as a fiery competitor like Tom Brady, who famously chewed out teammates on the sidelines but later won their respect with rings, or being dismissed as immature like Manziel, whose antics overshadowed his career before it ever truly started. Which side he lands on may depend less on the accuracy of Szmyt and more on whether Sanders can balance accountability with public composure. In today's NFL, where every sideline moment is clipped and replayed millions of times online, the difference between leader and humiliator comes down to perception, and Sanders' confrontation with Szmyt has already tilted the scales into one of the league's defining talking points. When you step away from the field and look at the broader picture, the confrontation between Shedeur Sanders and Szmyt didn't just play out as a football storyline, it became a business and media event. Sports is as much about perception and revenue as it is about touchdowns and field goals, and in this case, the fallout stretched far beyond Cleveland's sideline. Ratings data showed the Browns' preseason broadcast already had higher than expected viewership thanks to Sanders' presence, but the clip of him going after Szmyt took things to another level. One local affiliate reported that replay packages featuring the argument drove a 14% spike in their online streaming numbers during the post-game window. Nationally, mentions of Sanders on Twitter/X increased by more than 30,000 within the first 2 hours after the game, making him the most discussed rookie of the preseason, ahead of higher drafted names like Caleb Williams and Drake May. That kind of digital traction is valuable for networks, sponsors, and even the league itself because it drives clicks, airtime, and advertising dollars. From a ticket sales perspective, the incident had a ripple effect too. The Browns had already seen a jump in preseason attendance, averaging around 58,000 fans compared to the 49,000 they drew in last year's exhibition slate. A lot of that surge came from curiosity about Sanders, who brought his Colorado fan base and national spotlight with him. But after the viral confrontation, secondary market activity ticked noticeably higher for the team's next home game. Ticket resale platforms reported a 22% rise in searches for Browns tickets within 48 hours of the Szmyt clip, suggesting that even controversy has a way of drawing fans into the stadium. Some wanted to see Sanders prove himself again, others wanted to see if another sideline moment would unfold. Either way, demand increased, and that means more revenue funneled into the team's ecosystem. Merchandise sales tell a similar story. Sanders' Browns jersey had already cracked the NFL's top 15 in preseason sales, a rare feat for a rookie who wasn't drafted in the top 5. Following the incident, local shops in Cleveland noted that his jersey outsold Nick Chubb's by nearly 20% over the weekend. While the confrontation was polarizing in terms of opinion, it undeniably raised his profile. And in the NFL, higher profile often equals higher revenue. The irony is that Szmyt, the player on the receiving end of the moment, doesn't have that same brand insulation. Kickers almost never see merchandise spikes, and in fact, the backlash might work against him in ways that extend beyond roster security. Fans talk, social media fuels perception, and when your name is trending for a missed kick instead of a game-winning one, the business side of your career dries up quickly. The gambling market also reacted. Sportsbooks track more than just game lines. They follow player-related prop bets and team sentiment. In the week after the Sanders-Szmyt confrontation, several books reported a dip in bets tied to Browns' special teams props, such as field goals made or total kicking points. One oddsmaker noted that the handle on Cleveland's kicking-related props fell by nearly 40% compared to the prior week, reflecting how quickly bettors lose confidence once a kicker is publicly singled out. At the same time, Sanders-related props like passing yards and touchdown totals drew heavier action, reinforcing how storylines directly influence where money flows. Fan sentiment was perhaps the most fascinating part of the deeper context. Local radio call-ins were split almost down the middle. Some fans loved Sanders' fiery accountability, saying it was about time a quarterback in Cleveland demanded excellence. Others felt he embarrassed a teammate unnecessarily, pointing out that leadership requires building trust rather than breaking it down in front of cameras. Polling on fan forums reflected this divide. One thread on a Browns fan site asking whether Sanders showed true leadership or immaturity drew more than 5,000 responses, with roughly 52% leaning positive and 48% negative. That razor-thin margin shows just how polarizing Sanders already is in a fan base that has long craved stability. Sponsors watch these narratives closely. Sanders, with his name recognition and NIL-era marketing savvy, is already positioned as one of the league's most marketable rookies. A single viral clip can either boost or hinder his attractiveness. Some companies see fire and competitiveness as brandable qualities. Think of Gatorade or Nike campaigns that thrive on edge and intensity. Others, especially family-focused sponsors, may hesitate if his image veers toward locker room problems. Szmyt, by contrast, doesn't bring that marketing weight. For him, the confrontation doesn't just risk his roster spot, it risks his anonymity, turning him into a symbol of failure in highlight reels. When you take the business, ratings, and fan elements together, the deeper context is clear. The confrontation was more than an emotional sideline moment. It reshaped how the Browns are discussed nationally. It impacted how tickets and jerseys moved locally. It shifted betting patterns, and it split a fan base hungry for progress. In today's NFL, that kind of multi-layered impact is as meaningful as the box score, because it sets the stage for how both players will be judged going forward, not just as athletes, but as figures in the broader marketplace of professional football. The confrontation between Shedeur Sanders and Andre Szmyt doesn't end with one missed kick and one fiery sideline exchange. It sets up a series of ripple effects that could define the Browns' season and possibly Sanders' rookie narrative. Looking ahead, the first implication is roster security. Kickers live on the thinnest ice in the NFL, and Szmyt's numbers alone already put him in jeopardy. A 50% preseason accuracy rate when the league standard hovers around 85% is enough to force front offices to make calls to available veterans. Add the fact that Cleveland's franchise quarterback in waiting was seen on live TV losing patience with him, and the odds of Szmyt surviving final roster cuts plummet. If he's released, it won't just be about performance, it will be about optics. The Browns signaling that they side with Sanders' standard of accountability. For Sanders, the future implications are more complicated. On one hand, publicly demanding excellence can cement his identity as the leader of the franchise. Teammates may respect that fire if it translates into wins, much like how Tom Brady earned credibility in New England through fiery sideline moments that ultimately led to Super Bowls. If Sanders delivers, this clip will be remembered as the first sign of a quarterback who refused to tolerate mediocrity. On the other hand, if the Browns stumble out of the gate, or if Sanders struggles in his own performance, critics will circle back to this moment as evidence of misplaced blame and poor leadership. His rookie season is now tied to a perception test. Can he back up the fire with results? The coaching staff faces its own balancing act. Kevin Stefanski now has to manage not only Sanders' development, but also the locker room's interpretation of what happened. If players believe Sanders crossed a line, trust could fracture. Veteran leaders on the roster may need to step in, either to back Sanders or to smooth things over with teammates who value unity over public accountability. That dynamic could influence practice reps, with coaches intentionally scripting moments to showcase Sanders encouraging teammates, counterbalancing the viral clip. In a league where everything is about messaging, to the media, to fans, to the locker room, the Browns will be intentional in how they present their quarterback going forward. Playoff odds are another factor. Last season, Cleveland won 4 games by 3 points or fewer, in a division as tight as the AFC North, where the Ravens and Bengals each finished with double-digit wins. Kicking stability isn't a luxury, it's a requirement. If Szmyt's inconsistency continues, or if the Browns struggle to find a reliable replacement, Sanders' leadership won't be the only thing under fire. Games could literally be lost by a single missed field goal, erasing all the good work done by the offense. Analytics show that in games decided by a field goal or less, teams with top 10 kickers win nearly 63% of the time, while those in the bottom tier win just 39%. That swing could be the difference between a wild card berth and missing the postseason entirely. Sanders may have been justified in his frustration, but the Browns now must prove they can correct the issue before it costs them meaningful games. National perception is another layer of implication. If Sanders keeps producing, media narratives may begin to spin the Szmyt confrontation as the birth of his leadership identity, a quarterback unafraid to demand accountability even as a rookie. But if controversies pile up, the storyline could shift toward immature rookie struggling to adjust. That framing matters because it influences not just fan sentiment, but also endorsement opportunities. Brands will continue to monitor how Sanders navigates the spotlight. Nike, which already has a relationship with him dating back to college, may see his fiery sideline moment as fuel for marketing campaigns built around competitiveness. Conversely, more conservative sponsors could hesitate if Sanders develops a reputation for throwing teammates under the bus. For Szmyt, the future outlook is less forgiving. If he survives cuts, every kick he attempts will feel magnified because the next miss will be viewed not just as an error, but as a test of whether Sanders' frustration was justified. The mental toll of knowing a missed attempt could validate the quarterback's very public critique might weigh heavier than the mechanics of kicking itself. If Szmyt is released, he enters a free agent market where teams will remember not just his accuracy numbers, but also the clip of Sanders calling him out. Fair or not, that stigma could stick. Looking at the bigger picture, the Browns are at a crossroads. They've been searching for a franchise quarterback for decades, and in Sanders, they may have finally found one with both talent and marketability. But how they manage moments like this will shape whether he grows into a trusted leader or becomes another polarizing figure in Cleveland's long quarterback history. The future implications reach into every layer of the organization: roster construction, playoff viability, fan loyalty, and national brand reputation. What happens next will depend less on the missed kick itself and more on how Sanders, Szmyt, and the Browns choose to move forward. Will Sanders double down on his fiery accountability, or will he learn to balance that with public support? Will the Browns secure stability at kicker before it costs them games, or will they let the issue fester into the regular season? These are the questions that will define not just the aftermath of a viral clip, but the trajectory of Cleveland's entire season. Moments like this live longer than the box score, and for Shedeur Sanders, his rookie season will now always include the night he was caught on live TV confronting Szmyt. What could have been just another preseason missed kick turned into a flashpoint about leadership, accountability, and public humiliation. Sanders has the numbers to justify excitement: his completion rate, his poise in the pocket, his ability to energize a fan base. But the viral clip shows that his journey will be judged as much by how he handles teammates as by how he handles defenses. For Szmyt, the fallout may mean a shorter window to prove he belongs in the NFL. For the Browns, it crystallizes how fragile chemistry can be in a league where every moment is magnified and replayed endlessly. The takeaway is simple: Sanders' fire could become the foundation of his leadership legacy, or it could be the first crack in a relationship with teammates he'll need if Cleveland is to contend. One sideline moment doesn't define a career, but it can define a narrative, and right now the NFL world is watching to see which way it goes. So here's the debate: was Sanders showing the kind of accountability every franchise quarterback needs, or was this a dangerous step that risks fracturing the locker room before his career even begins? And perhaps more importantly, should fans and franchises value raw emotion in their leaders, even if it comes at the cost of humiliating a teammate on national television?